Oh boy, here I go making another video again. I know people have been slacking this week, but on Tuesday I had to go to a team meeting at work and I had a little drink, so that was me slacking. And then I did something last night. I didn't get drunk or anything, but I went to some do, and to be honest, I think my time could have been better spent elsewhere, but I did it for a good cause, and so it was all worth it in the end. Anyway, now I'm back. So let's get into the swing of things. And today's video is, well, it's part of a running theme on this channel. And it's about The Guardian and how regressive they are and how they have fallen. Essentially, it's another one of those, let's demonise white people, specifically white men. Because The Guardian have forgotten who they were meant to represent, who they were meant to protect. The working class, right? They're a socialist, left-leaning magazine. They came from my city originally when it was an industrial powerhouse. So it's in their best interests to cater to the people they're supposed to be for. The working class, specifically the white working class. And, you know, there's a few writers there who still uphold this thing where they represent the whole people who are working class, white, black, Asian, etc. But sadly, they're a minority these days. Instead, we have these regressives who blame everything on these white people, even the working class people and even those middle class people who don't actually hold any power whatsoever. They are at fault, they are controlling everything, and this needs to stop because they're white. And it just shows how their priorities have fallen and why hardly anybody reads them or takes them seriously. And to be honest, this is what happens when you're meant to be a socialist newspaper that represents the working class, but your readership is mostly middle class. I think this is the end result of that. You might get a few educated, intelligent working class people reading it because they don't want to read the Daily Mirror, which is shit. That is the other left-leaning one that most working class people tend to go for. Or they don't want to read the Daily Mail because it's shit as well, for the opposite reasons. And the Sun, well, the Sun is just an unethical, horrible rag, and the less said about that the better. But I don't think these readers want to be seeing this now, do they? The little working class readership you have left. I don't think they want to be seeing this shit on YouTube now, do they? But, you know, most of your audience would be into this shit, so why should I spoil it, people, and debunk it so soon when we can watch the video? It's only 2 minutes. Let's go. And immediately, we already have an issue here because what culture? And I don't mean the corporation.
What do Beyonce, Viola Davis and Naomi Campbell have in common?
They're entertainers, they are celebrities, they're very rich, and that's about it really. That's all I can think of in terms of them as people. But I think I know where you're headed here, love. I know where you're headed. Also, guys, can you guess by the title of the Guardian video, what kind of person's making this video?
Yes, they're some of the most powerful women of colour in their respective fields.
You do know that Beyonce is actually mixed race. She's part Latino, right? She's not actually black. And I know what you're trying to get here, because they're black and they're the most powerful black women in the entertainment industry or something, when really they're just amongst the most powerful people in the industry. And the industry has always had women who are very, very powerful. I can think back to Mary Pickford, almost 100 years ago, as one of the most powerful people. She helped create what is now United Artists. She was one of the shareholders. She was one of the main founders. And apparently, this is some kind of big achievement. And this is somehow white men control all culture when it's never really been like that, ever. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But even then, just talking about their colour as if that really matters when it doesn't. These people got where they are because of talent and because they're very shrewd businesswomen. They've obviously got some acumen. That's really all it comes down to. And also a bit of luck. You've got to have a bit of luck in this industry, and contacts. You've got to have contacts as well. They have the contacts. You should know that, right? You're a journalist. You researched this, right?
But their industry relevance is still determined by white men.
No, actually, their relevance is not determined by white men. They're determined by the consumers, who could be anybody. Do white men listen to Beyonce? Yeah, some do. But not really all of them, is it? And you can say the same for black men too. Most black men won't be listening to Beyonce. Most Asian men won't be listening to Beyonce, or Latino men. It's going to be women. Most of her fan base are female. Now, Viola Davis and the other one that you mentioned, I think they're actresses. I could be wrong. But their relevancy isn't really determined by anybody's race or gender. It's the consumer. If the consumers stop watching their films or buying their records, then their relevancy is going to wane. Or if they themselves do really silly things or make stupid decisions in their careers and in their lifetimes, then maybe they'll fall to relevancy. Or maybe the things that they do just become obsolete culturally. And that's not the fault of anybody in particular, that's just tastes change, and if you can't adapt, then you fall to the wayside. Alternatively, those tastes can then come back as a form of nostalgia thing, and then they can end up being relevant again at the age of God knows what, I don't know, who cares? Their relevancy is not determined by white people, specifically white men, and I don't know what you mean by that, unless you mean record executives and film guys, you know, film execs.
Of course, these women are hugely successful in their own rights. But looking at the very highest measures of success, awards, 5-star reviews, write-ups, the limitations of how high a woman of colour can go are startling.
They're successful, so what are white men doing that is determining their success exactly? It sounds like to me, you're almost downplaying their success. You're saying it's because of these white men in these high positions, or even the people buying stuff, that's the reason why they're successful. I mean, yeah, the consumers buy it, therefore they make money and become successful. But that's every race and gender doing that. And even then, it's because of their talents. It is mostly down to them that they're successful. So you're taking that away from them. That is counterproductive. And I find that's just horrible. I think that's racist. I think that's sexist. I think that's insulting. I would be insulted if I was Beyonce, but she's like similar to you in terms of politics, so she'd be going, yay girl, preach it. Although she does do it for the money. There's only so many awards, only so much fame you can get. It's really not as limitless as you're trying to make it out to be. There's only an Ivor Novello award, a Grammy, an Oscar, a BAFTA, loads of other types of things. There's only so much you can get, and you're not going to win everything. You're just not. You can try your hardest, but at the end of the day, it's down to one person or a group of persons' opinions on who gets what award. And that could be anybody. It has nothing to do with race. But of course it does, right? I mean, it's startling how little they have to go, right? Are you going to show me anything like that?
Beyonce's latest album, Lemonade, was, and this is not an exaggeration, one of the biggest musical moments of the last 20 years. It got everyone talking about America's race problem, and a certain Becky with the good hair, with people skipping work to watch the first visual album of its kind.
Yes, it was highly successful, like her other albums, and I wouldn't say it's going to be this big cultural thing. I think history will look back and say it was the product of a regressive time. But hey, that's just my opinion. But I don't get it. Why are you mentioning this? You're mentioning all this big success and how bad they all have it, yet you're making it out like they have a good time. Like, they have it no worse or better than anybody else. She's been able to produce this album, this visual album that was the first of its kind when it wasn't. There's been countless albums that are visual. They usually call concept albums that the progressive rock guys did, but never mind. Research people.
But it lost Album of the Year to Adele's 25 at this year's Grammys.
Oh, what a shame. It lost out to another culturally relevant album that did hugely well for the person in particular. It couldn't be because the people at the Grammys couldn't decide on who to give the album to, so they decided to give it to Adele because they think that album was marginally better than Lemonade. Even though, in my personal opinion, neither of the albums appeal to me and I would rather have given it to somebody else. Personal tastes, they're so racist, right? It's everything to do with Adele's race, right? I mean, and don't you find it funny that these white men that control culture are giving a Grammy to a white woman? Or even considering giving the award to a mixed race woman? Don't you think that's odd? Are they really controlling anything, or are they just giving it to who they think did a good job? I'm just wondering.
25, Adele. Arguably the most influential music awards there are.
One could argue the Ivor Novello Awards are probably a bit more respected than the Grammys, just because it's a musicians thing, like it's the musicians rewarding the musicians, because Ivor Novello was a musician. But look at Beyonce. She's like, yeah, good choice. She won it. Congratulations. She's gracious in defeat. In fact, everybody there is gracious in defeat, and you can see quite an eclectic group of people. You've got Drake, another mixed race person, and you've got a few white people there, and loads of people. It's like, that's a very ethnically diverse group. So What are you trying to say? And they're all gracious in defeat. They all accept that a good artist won the award, who deserved to win the award. So what is your issue here? You are literally taking issue for Beyonce, who sees no issue with Adele winning the Grammy.
Adele's a great artist, but 25 was by no means as consequential, musically or culturally, as Lemonade.
That's your subjective opinion. That is not a fact. Your subjective opinion does not make that so. Because considering that she was headlining Glastonbury of all festivals, she had #1s across the Atlantic and in Europe and everywhere else. It was the biggest album she's ever released to date. How can you say it wasn't a cultural impact, considering the amount of people it's touched and the massive stadium tour she's just done? Like, she never did stadium tours before, and now she is. It became a cultural icon for whatever reason. The songs have been played all over. As much as Beyonce, if not more, especially in this country. I'm not saying it's bigger or better than Lemonade. I'm just saying it has had a cultural impact as big as Lemonade in a different way. And even then, Lemonade was not making people talk about race and culture and stuff like that. People were already talking about that. Beyonce jumped on the bandwagon for subject matter, essentially, and to make money, as she always does. So, yeah. Lemonade, its cultural impact, you've bigged up, and Adele, you've tried to downplay, all because of her race. And I'm failing to see how white men are the racists here, who apparently control everything. All I'm seeing is a racist Asian woman who doesn't like white people, and is going to downplay even a fellow woman's success because she's white. I think that speaks volumes.
Even Adele admitted she shouldn't have won over Beyonce.
But I can't possibly accept this award. My artist of my life is Beyonce, and this album for me, the Lemonade album, was just so monumental.
It has nothing to do with her race. It has nothing to do with the fact that Beyonce deserved it more. That's Adele's opinion as well. Adele is a fan of Beyonce. She grew up listening to Beyonce's music and obviously loved Lemonade. And in her opinion, Lemonade was better. So what? That doesn't necessarily reinforce your view at all, actually. That's just another subjective opinion. And Adele's being humble. And even Beyonce's like, no, I love you. No way, nah, you deserve it. So again, Beyonce is actually, if we're going to go by subjective opinions, actually not reinforcing yours, because she's shaking her head and said, no, accept it.
So it's worth questioning why this work of art was snubbed.
There is no debate to be had. This isn't Metallica versus Jethro Tull in 1989. There's something that should be worthy of debate, right? Here's Metallica, a multiracial band, because Kirk Hammett is mixed race. He's part Irish, part Filipino. The rest are white. But I guess that doesn't matter then, does it? That's too many white people, right, Yusuf? They were the biggest metal band at the time, and would get even bigger in 1991 with the release of the Black Album. They should have won the Metal Album of the Year, but the Grammys gave it to Jethro Tull, who aren't a metal band, but did a hard rock album that year. They should never have won it, because one, that wasn't one of their best albums, and two, it's quite clear that one was the best album of the year. They should have won. They were snubbed because they were the new young upstarts from the thrash metal scene. But apparently, Adele and Beyonce, both from the pop world, both from that kind of genre, battling against each other in the Grammys, and one won through the finest of margins, is apparently a debate worth having, and not Metallica versus Jethro Tull. I'd love to see your reasons why we should be debating a normal Grammy thing, really.
At the Grammys, whose mysterious recording academy has a well-documented history of favouring music by white artists over their non-white counterparts.
Well, there's a criticism. I've never heard of them before. I've heard of them being pandering and always favouring the hot artist over the other one, so the one who is the most popular, and it seems to me that Adele must have been the most popular. They're very pandering. Again, it's not the Ivor Novello Award, but again, where is this history? Where have they ever favoured white artists over coloured artists? Like, when have they ever done that?
In fashion, we see the same pattern.
Oh, okay, so no evidence to show that they are indeed racist and favour white artists over black artists. You know, in fact, she's not really mentioned white men at all. In fact, just once. And that was to say that these artists, you know, Viola Davis, Beyonce, they owe their relevancy to white people, to white men. And that if these white men dislike them for whatever reason, whoever these mythical white men are, the patriarchy, then they will become irrelevant, even though there's no evidence to suggest that. Also, interestingly enough, this is a British person talking about American culture. You do realise that This isn't one big culture. We aren't the 51st state of America, right? You are talking about American culture, which is very distinct from ours. What is it about these people talking about American culture if it's this big one culture of the world when it isn't? And this is a British person using this. Not a single British example other than Adele, and that was used as some kind of criticism.
There's a bit of diversity on the catwalks. Think Iman, Alec Weck, even hijabi models, Maria Idrisi and Halima Erdem.
You're also forgetting Naomi Campbell and Grace Jones. There's been loads of people who've been models throughout the years of different colours and shapes and sizes. What is your issue here? Why would they favour one over another? Maybe, just maybe, most of the women and the men who are hired are white because in these countries, they are mostly white. Like, you're not criticising African countries and Asian countries for only employing Africans and Asians now, are you? Because they're mostly African and Asian and not many white people live in those countries anyway. So where's the bias? It's literally just, this is the pool of people that they have to recruit from, and these are most of the people that get the jobs because there's more of them. There is no bias to be had. And if there is, well, wouldn't that be against the law and they should be investigated? But even then, you can't prove it because you can't get into these people's heads. You're just asserting. There's no evidence to be had.
But who's calling the shots? The UK's top 5 fashion magazines are edited by white women. And in the people who make the designs, choose the models, and write about the shows, in other words, set the standard for beauty, that sliver of racial diversity becomes non-existent.
You just defeated your own argument that white men control culture and then they can dictate who gets what job and who gets what award. When there's white women controlling fashion magazines and they're getting to hire models and stuff like that. And apparently that's an issue because they're white, but you just said that men do it. What? And even then, in the fashion industry, most men who work there are going to be gay. That's just where they gravitate towards, for whatever reason. I don't know why, they just do. Is that discriminatory against straight men? Or are you going to say that, oh, those men who are going to be mostly white anyway, even the gay ones, are there because of their race as well? Are you really going to go down the progressive stack? Really?
In film, in fine arts, the same problem persists.
Oh, shock horror. In mostly white countries, a lot of the artists are going to be white. Shock horror. And also, I like how you've not actually shown any statistics to show how this colour thing that you've been complaining about is non-existent. Like, how do I know? You're just saying it is, but I'm not seeing any data to back it up.
We are all now familiar with how white and old the Oscars Academy is.
There's loads of people of colour in there. What are you talking about? It's not that white. And even then, that's not an issue. They're not there to pick things based on race and shit. This isn't the same academy of the 1930s and 20s, or the 40s, or the 50s, or even the 60s. This is an entirely different generation who don't judge based on that. So, what are you trying to say? Because they're white, they're going to be racist and pick things based on their race, but then other ethnicities and races don't do that either? That's just, well, that's just a fallacy, isn't it?
They've pledged to change this by 2020. But it took every nominee in all acting categories to be white for 2 years in a row for the world to wake up to the scale of the problem.
There is no problem. Only to racists like you is there a problem. And they've only been forced to change this, idea of meritocracy because you want more people winning that don't look white because you don't like white people. That's the reason why they're now changing something that doesn't need to be changed. They've come a long way over the last 100 years nearly, and now you're going to make them regress back to those days, but only instead of favouring white people, you're going to favour people who aren't? Seriously? This is your idea of equality. So now we have to do away with meritocracy and logic and just go with black person's black, so they have to be in there, despite the fact that this film may be bad, or his performance may not be as good as the other black person. Just because this black person is the biggest black actor, he has to be in there, or she has to be in there. Do you see how stupid this is? So what if 2 years in a row they were all white people? That's because America is 77% white. Of course there's going to be a greater chance of that happening. That doesn't make them racist. There were people who were coloured in that very assembly voting, and they voted against Denzel Washington and all the others because they must have thought they weren't good enough that year. So what's your argument?
No matter how celebrated a woman of colour is, the official mark of her critical relevance is held under lock and key by the faceless white men.
So the male black artists don't have this issue? And you've actually spent a good 3/4 of the video Not arguing about white men and just arguing about nothing or white women. You've not shown in any way how white men control American culture or British culture or any culture. You've not really proven that. You've just proven that some black people don't win every year, and that's an issue because white people won over them. And you have racial biases, but you're going to then project that onto other people and say that they have the racial bias. Right.
And handful of women who control their industries.
Oh, so a handful of women now, is it? Then why didn't you just put, why do white people control culture? No, instead you put white men. Clickbait, wasn't it? Oh, you shameful person.
Yes, women of colour are smashing the art world's glass ceiling, but they're a long way from holding its keys.
Typical. You just want to control it. It's not about getting more people to be successful. It's not about making art better or film better or anything better really. It's just about control. You want your own little social justice clique in control so that you can get rid of the evil white people. And even then, there's no glass ceiling. In fact, if there is a glass ceiling, it has to do with having contacts and talent. It's very hard to break into the art world and the film world and the music industry. It's incredibly difficult. You're either good or you have good contacts. That's really all it is. But anyway, I've gone on long enough. This has been too long for a 2-minute video to respond to, so anyway, this has been Charming Man 93. Like and share the video, subscribe to my channel, donate to my Patreon if you'd like to. Until next time, I'll see you all later.